Chaos does not warn when it arrives. He just comes in, without knocking, without asking permission, without giving time. It was like that in that late afternoon, when the most elegant and modern building in the city simply stopped. First it was a tremor in the lights, as if the building was about to choke. Then the dark, not the dark of the power outage, but the dark of control failure. The dark that shows that, behind all the technology, we are still fragile, human, or less than that, for some. Artur Lemos has always liked to have the world in the palm of his hand. CEO, founder, genius, a name that occupied magazine covers, and rooms where decisions were worth millions. The building was the reflection of his mind, voice commands, facial recognition, invisible sensors that predicted the desire before it was uttered. But no artificial intelligence could predict the collapse that was coming. Everything froze. The armored doors that only opened with a digital iris became walls. The elevators plummeted to the ground floor and never returned. The security system, which even monitored the heart rate of visitors, turned off without warning. The sound of alarms, once robotic and distant, was now an illogical lament, going off where it shouldn't, silencing where it was necessary to scream. And in the center of the meeting room, under the pale glow of emergency lights, was he, Artur, surrounded by engineers, technicians, high-ranking executives, all wearing confidence as armor, until the time the armor broke. The Omega system has quadruple redundancy. This wasn't supposed to happen, he shouted, his voice mixing fear and fury. But no one answered. Some tried to appear useful by typing codes into mute notebooks. Others just stared at the ground, as if looking for an answer there. None of them dared to look the billionaire in the eye. None of them knew what to do without the system they had always thought for them. It was a room full of powerful people and impotence. On the mirrored glass wall, the reflection showed an even harsher scenario. White men in suits, sweating, terrified, as if the entire building had revealed an uncomfortable truth. That tech empire was a house of cards, and it only took a breath of the unforeseen to make it all fall apart. But there, hidden behind the pantry, with an old notebook on her lap and a look that no one noticed, someone saw the map of the problem, and they didn't know it yet. But it would be the answer that none of them had the courage to imagine. Artur Lemos' building was a capsule of exclusion masked as innovation. Inside, technology did more than automate tasks. It automated distances, doors that opened only to those whom the system recognized as authorized, rooms where voices were only heard if they carried a certain timbre, a certain surname, a certain color. Everything in that building screamed efficiency. But the scream that came from below, from the floors where the uniform is stained with cleaning products and sweat, no one heard. The cleaning lady who went up and down the 26 floors every day, pushing the cart of rags and buckets, knew every corner of that place better than any data engineer. He knew where the light flickered before the blackout, which doors jammed frequently, which rooms exuded arrogance even when empty. Her name was Rosa, but inside she was just called the one with cleaning. And along with her came her daughter, Ana Clara, who waited always quietly in the corner of the pantry, devouring programming tutorials with her eyes and dismantling plastic dreams with the same dexterity with which she assembled circuit boards at home, with parts found in the condominium's electronic waste. But no one there believed she could know anything. Even with the twinkle in her eyes, even with her sharp wit, even with her notebooks full of handwritten codes, she was invisible. The technology celebrated by the executives was cold. The genius they venerated was only recognized if he wore a blazer and spoke with an elite accent. Otherwise, it was just poor people's curiosity. The system was efficient but cruel. He knew exactly who to exclude without having to say a word. It was enough to look at who was in the glass-enclosed rooms and who cleaned the corridors. It was enough to see who wore a golden badge and who had to wait outside. And Arthur never went down to the ground floor. He never saw the tired look of Rosa at the end of the day, nor the restless silence of Ana Clara, there in the corner, absorbing the world without being noticed. For him, that was not an absence of empathy. It was just a logic of efficiency. Whoever is brilliant rises. Whoever cleans stays. Simple as that. Cruel as that. That day, however, logic began to crumble. And behind every technical failure, the building whispered a truth. It wasn't just the system that was broken. It was the way it had been built from the beginning. And between one silence and another, Ana Clara still watched. But what she didn't know was that, soon, silence would have a name, and the name would be hers. She hesitated. For a second, just for a second, Ana Clara almost stood up. I heard the codes failing in the alarms as if listening to a familiar language being misspoken. Every alert, every screen flashing red, was a wrong sentence that she knew how to correct. But he hesitated, because he knew what happened to those who dared to exist where they were not allowed to be. And that's when he tried. He tried the way the invisible learned to try, in silence. He pulled out his old cell phone, opened a network reader program, and began to observe the connections. It didn't invade anything. It didn't break any rules. He just looked. He tried to understand. She tried to help without being seen, as she always was. But Rosa saw it. The mother felt the danger in the form of possibility. "Keep it, daughter," she whispered with her eyes. Ana obeyed. It was not yet time. Maybe it never was. Because in that place, for people like them, even knowing too much was dangerous. Meanwhile, in the center of the control room, engineers ran in circles. They connected cables, restarted servers, read manuals as if words could save a system that no longer recognized them. A newer technician suggested a general reset, and was silenced with a cutting stare. Nobody wanted to make a mistake in front of Arthur. No one wanted to look small in front of a man who only valued what glittered. It was then that one of them noticed the girl in the pantry. "The cleaning lady's daughter is playing with her cell phone," he whispered, more out of contempt than warning. Arthur listened. He walked there with hard steps. He stopped at the door as if it were an invasion. "Is everything okay here?" he asked in a tone that feigned kindness but oozed judgment. Ana did not answer. Rosa placed herself in front, as if covering a fire with her body. "She's just waiting for me, sir." And he nodded, not with respect, but with the impatience of those who do not want to waste time with what or who they consider irrelevant. There, at that moment, Ana fell silent, not out of fear, but for something even deeper, for understanding that, in that world, intelligence was only welcome if it came wrapped in the right package. She tried. She tried to resist the silence that swallowed her every day. He tried to show value without causing discomfort. She tried to be seen without being interpreted as a threat, but it failed. And at that very moment, sitting next to the cleaning cart, she felt what many people have felt all their lives, that sometimes it is not enough to know. You have to have the opportunity, and that opportunity is capable of changing everything. In the next room, the alarms went back to screaming, and the chaos that no one could solve. I had not yet found anyone who had the courage to try, but her time was coming. But even she didn't know it yet. It was a sound, small, almost nothing. A brief hiss coming from Ana Clara's headphones, who still held her cell phone hidden in her lap. It was a sign, a breather from the system, a weak pulsing code in the midst of collapse. That hiss did not say, "error." It said, "there is a way." And it was there that everything began to change, but not by miracle, by choice. She looked at her mother, then at the living room. People were screaming. The billionaire was gesticulating. The codes kept failing. The world inside was crumbling into elegant despair, where humiliation had an expensive perfume and incompetence was disguised by technical terms in English. Ana Clara felt something inside her chest. It wasn't courage yet. It was suppressed indignation, whispering, "You know." It was as if something ancestral said, "How many times have you been silenced like this?" But now, inside, something was beginning to break the silence. That's when the younger coach, the one who hadn't yet learned to fully bow to the system, saw his notebook. It was open, unintentionally, showing handwritten lines, commands, languages, network maps. He didn't understand everything, but he understood enough. "This here, what did you do?" She nodded slowly, and he, in a gesture that he didn't know would change everything, replied, "Show me how you got there," he said quietly, without authority, but with listening. It was the first look that didn't cross her. It was the first one that recognized her. Gradually, the two moved away from the cup and towards the secondary server, the only one still working between failures. The coach made room, asked for permission, not for Ana Clara, but for the moment, and there, with a naturalness that seemed like a miracle, she began to explain what she was seeing. Simple, safe words, no jargon, as if translating the confusion of the world with the vocabulary of the soul. And then came Arthur. He saw the scene, stopped. His silence was no longer arrogant. It was curious. For a moment, he did not scream. He just listened. And when he saw the codes flow on Anna's screen, something inside him, still small, still proud, snapped, because what she did was not just fix a system. It was to show that intelligence does not have a badge. That value is not something that is seen by the color of the skin or the beautiful clothes. That talent, when ignored, learns to whisper, until someone finally listens. But at that moment, something that no one expected began to be born. She did not ask for permission, not because it was too bold, but because at that moment, he realized that if he continued to wait for authorization to exist, he would never do what needed to be done. Anna Clara walked to the secondary panel, with steps that trembled inside, but did not falter on the outside. No one taught her how to walk under doubting gazes. She taught herself, and that's how he got there. While the men in suits were still trying to understand what reverse security route protocol was, she was already navigating the system as if recognizing an old acquaintance in the crowd. His fingers, firm, typed with rhythm. His eyes, attentive, read what the screen did not say. There, between commands and failures, she read intention, read abandonment. I read carelessness of those who build an empire forgetting the foundations. The younger coach, who had previously listened to her, now watched in silence. He knew that something extraordinary was happening there, but not because it was unprecedented. It was extraordinary for having been, until then, invisible. Arthur was standing, further back. His crossed arms were no longer a sign of authority. Now they were defense. As someone who sees a truth too big to fit into his own pride. He still didn't know exactly what Anna was doing, but he knew that no one else there had even been able to come close to the solution. She understands the system better than the whole team, someone whispered. It was not shouted at, nor assumed. It was said as if escaping a confession. Rosa, from the corner of the room, did not dare to move. She knew that any gesture could interrupt the fragile thread that formed between her daughter and the impossible. His teary eyes followed each command as if they were footsteps in a minefield. Each letter typed was an advance against centuries of discredit. And then, Anna stopped. He took a deep breath, and with a single touch, he restarted the main core of the building. The screen that for hours flashed red now glowed with life. The sound of the alarm ceased. The doors began to unlock. The lights, previously flashing, have calmed down, but the greatest silence was not that of the building. It was the people's. The silence of those who have just seen the impossible happen without understanding how. The silence of those who, until then, did not believe that a black girl, the daughter of the cleaning lady, could be the most prepared person in that room. And in that silence, the world began to change. But someone still needed to say something. It was not an applause, not a scream, not even a complete sentence. The first answer came like a half-eyed whisper, like when a certainty changes owner and no one knows how to name it yet. One of the engineers, the older one, who used to look away whenever Rosa passed by cleaning the meeting room, nodded slowly, as if acknowledging an old truth. She saved us. Arthur still remained standing, motionless, but he no longer looked at the screens. His eyes were on Anna. For the first time, they were in it, not in her simple clothing, nor in her condition, nor in the place from which she came, but in what she was, a young black woman, silent, sharp, and bright as an old blade. Someone offered a chair. She declined with a gentle nod. Her body trembled inside, but on the outside, it was still the same posture she had cultivated since she was little, not showing too much. Because where she grew up, any smile could be read as sass, any shine as a threat. Rosa then approached, slowly, with her hands clasped in her apron. She wanted to say something, but she was mute. He just touched his daughter's shoulder and took a deep breath, as if thanking for everything he didn't have the courage to dream. It was as if the world had finally heard that prayer she prayed silently every night, bending the knee to what was left of faith. Arthur broke his silence. "What's your name?" he asked. It was not a formality. It was an attempt to put himself on the same plane as someone who, for so many years, he would have ignored in the elevator. "Anna Clara," she replied. And in that name, said in a low voice, there was more presence than in all the positions in that room. It was then that he did the unthinkable. He asked her to explain what she had done, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to understand. And while she detailed the sequence of restored protocols, the paths she used to circumvent the system's blockages, and the risks she took, no one interrupted, because in that explanation, there was something that made everyone bow, not for hierarchy, but for recognition. At the end, he just said, "Do you want to study with me?" The sentence fell like a calm thunderbolt. It was not just any offer. It was an invitation, a public recognition, one chance. And at that moment, Anna did not answer, because sometimes, what needs to be felt first, it still doesn't fit into words. But she knew. He knew that this was not a favor. It was justice. And there would be more to come. Because recognizing is just the beginning. The building was already working again. The doors opened lightly. The lights pulsed steadily. The monitors displayed vivid graphics as if nothing had happened. But anyone who looked closely would realize something there was no longer the same. It was not the system that had been restored. It was the logic that sustained that world that was beginning to change. Silently, in the glass and steel corridors, the looks became different. Executives, previously oblivious to the ground they were walking on, now looked sideways when Rosa passed by. Some, out of discomfort, others, out of shame. None of them dared to joke about the coincidence that everything started working again exactly after the cleaning lady's daughter touched the code. But it was not only that. Ana Clara now walked through the lobby with a new kind of presence. It was not haughtiness. It wasn't pride. It was consciousness. She knew what she had done, and she knew, too, that that change did not fit only her. It was bigger. It was ancestral. It was collective. As if her every step inside now belonged to all the time someone like her was discredited before he was even heard. Arthur noticed, and that disconcerted him. Because for the first time in a long time, the man who created complex systems felt that he was not in control. But, instead of reacting with arrogance, he listened to what that annoyance wanted to teach. It was a lesson that no artificial intelligence would be able to program. Days later, he asked Anna to join the development team for a week. Observer, participant, apprentice and master at the same time. She sat at the table where she never imagined she would be. Not because he was not capable, but because he knew that the world usually denies these chairs to those who do not seem suitable. And when she spoke, for the first time, during a meeting with directors and engineers, what was heard was something rarer than applause. Silence. Silence of listening. Silence of someone who did not know what to say, because everything that was said before came from a place of unquestioned privilege. There, at that moment, she was no longer just the girl who saved the system, and she became the young woman who made us see what we have never seen. But a reunion was still missing, a return to the point where it all began, and it was there that the story would touch something deeper than any code. It was in the same elevator as always, the one that Anna only wore when no one looked. But now, the doors opened without hesitation, as if recognizing the new configuration of those who stepped there. There was no soundtrack, nor an announcement, just the calm sound of walking uphill, and in his chest, a dense silence, the kind of silence that precedes encounters that life takes a long time to allow. Rosa was not together that day. He stayed on the ground floor, working the same shift as always, but her eyes followed her daughter to the glass door that led to the highest floor, and even without seeing, she felt it. She felt that the return of that girl to the top was no longer as an escort. It was like presence. The reception was not ceremonial. There were no speeches, but it was enough for Anna to enter the room for the bodies to be arranged, not out of formality, but out of respect. The same respect that had always been denied him by omission now manifested itself in silence. It was the presence that taught more than any lecture. She walked to the meeting table, passed through the same corridors where she was previously ignored. The ground was the same, the ceiling the same, but something there was different, as if each object recognized that a cycle needed to be rewritten. It was then that Arthur called her to the corner of the room. There were no witnesses, only truth. He held an envelope, not as someone who gives a gift, but as someone who offers reparation. It's not just about studying, it's about what you opened up in here. I want you to help reshape our young talent program, and I want this program to start with you. She listened, in silence, with the firmness of one who knows that merit, when it comes with justice, does not need embellished words. She accepted, not by invitation, but for the right to transform the space that previously excluded her into fertile territory for others like her. On the way back, he passed through the cup, stopped. She looked at the corner where she had so often sat, invisible, next to the cleaning cart. He didn't cry, but his gaze spoke for her. Each tile on that wall seemed to return the echo of everything that was silenced. Not anymore. There, in that forgotten corner, she left something. A note, taped with tape, handwritten. The system only changes when those who have never been heard begin to speak. But there was still one last scene missing. A gesture, a symbol, something that would end the story the way she deserved. And that moment was about to happen. It was Friday. The sun beat down oblique on the windows of the lobby. Outside, the rhythm of the city took its course. Horns, hurried steps, notifications on the cell phone. But inside, in that tower where everything had changed without making a sound, time seemed to breathe slowly, as if the building knew that this would be a different day. Arthur arrived earlier. No entourage, no meetings. He carried in his hands a small object wrapped in a dark cloth. He went up to the top floor. He stopped in front of the central wall, where before there was only a metal sign with the name of the company. Cold, generic, almost too proud. He asked them to remove it, and in its place, he fixed what he was carrying. It was a simple frame, with a photo printed in black and white, the image of a hand holding a network cable, with colored threads hanging outwards, almost a gesture of suturing. Below the image, a sentence written with clean typography, without a signature. When all else failed, she was the one who reconnected. No one applauded. There was no event. But in the cafeteria, someone spilled the coffee. At the reception, an intern cried in silence. And in the internal message group, where inside jokes and performance goals once circulated, the image spread like a mute manifesto. It was the rarest recognition that can be given. What does not need to be justified? On the ground floor, Rosa looked at her daughter. The two were about to leave. Anna carried a backpack on her back, a notebook on her arm, and a different sparkle in her eyes. Not of those who won, but of those who were preparing to start. Because she knew that there, in that building that tried to silence her, she had left something more than solutions. He had left a trail. When they passed through the main entrance, Arthur was there, not with the attitude of a boss, but with his shoulders down, his hands joined, his gaze open. He held out a small card to her, only the company's logo, and on the back, a handwritten line. If one day I want to go back, it will be as a partner. Anna read it. He folded the card carefully. He kept it in his pocket without haste. And then, with the same calmness that he reconnected an entire system with a tap, he looked at it and smiled with his eyes. Then he turned to his mother, and together, they crossed the door, now not as passengers in the system, but like those who know that where a black woman steps, wise and silent, the world needs to learn to listen. And then, without saying anything, Anna took a small blue cable from her pocket. He placed it on the reception counter, and he left. It was just a thread, but those who saw it would know. It was there that everything started again. If this story spoke to your memory or to your struggle, don't let it pass in silence. Subscribe to the channel and strengthen this space made by us, for us. Leave your like so that the platform understands that our stories matter. Comment on what touched you, because your voice is also a tool for transformation. And share with those who carry the same blood, the same strength and the same courage to exist with dignity.